This is Love and DeepSpace, Under Deep Space, Chapter 8. We awaken on the sandy beach on top of a green leaf next to Raphael, who is working on a fire for us. Raphael basically calls us dumb for going after him, and we call him an idiot right back for going into that death trap. Raphael's staring off into the fire. He's very frustrated. He's giving off complete different vibes. Even though he's very angry, he still gives us his jacket to kind of cover up and keep us warm. The kitty comes out of the bushes and comes and snuggles up next to us, and Raph's mood kind of lightens up a little bit after we thank him, and we beg him to pet the cat. And as he's scolding it, and he's like, "You're lucky, you're lucky. She's convincing me to give you attention." The cat licks him, and he freaks out. He's like, "I'm gonna die. That's a monster. I'm infected." His usual dramatic self. We try to figure out why he dislikes the cat so much. And he says animals that like to snuggle up to humans usually have a tragic end. One moment, you're cute and cuddly. The next, they toss you aside. You're forgotten and left behind. And he says this with a very, very solemn tone. Raphael's visibly upset and a little frustrated again when we say, "Not all humans are like that." And he looks at us and he says, "Isn't there something important you forgot about?" Like very accusatory. And we're completely confused. And that's when he drops it, he flips the switch back off, and he gives us our payment. Our payment is an invitation to the nest. Essentially our one-way ticket into the N109 zone to be bait. We realize he must be a regular at this place if he was so easily able to obtain it. And he says, "Listen, I'll have your back, I'll help you out, but you have to find a way to blend in a bit better. Because this look you got going on right now is not gonna work. You being a hunter, it's not gonna fly. No one's gonna, buy into it." And he really stresses to get us to understand that it's going to be a very high price for us to pay for information on a mysterious protocore. And his eyes very much twinkle, like, "I know what you're after." And that shocks us, that he even has a vague idea of what we're really looking into. This scene ends with us getting picked up by a boat, and then we cut to Xavier's perspective. Xavier's in a very dark alley, and there's a radio on nearby that says that the Far Space Fleet is set to return tonight. The radio then continues saying that a new planet was discovered far off in the deep space tunnel, and that it appears to be dead. And that planet is Alpha P0159. But later on, we do find out that there were remnants of life to be found in that galaxy. A man appears before Xavier saying that someone is claiming Xavier is responsible for a man named Isaiah's death. But this man doesn't believe it. The man then continues saying, "I'm a monster now. You don't want to end up like me. But sooner or later, you will be walking this path as well. Only she can save us. You, of all people, should know that." Xavier kind of snaps and pulls out his blades, resting it to this man's throat. And he says, "Until that day comes, no one should think about getting close to her. The same goes for me." Xavier then calls the man a traitor, and the man implies that they're from the same place, calling Xavier the traitor. Xavier then just fully ends the man with no remorse. His figure transforms into specks of light that are shortly corroded by black particles. We then continue on in Xavier's perspective, where he goes to the nest. We learn the man Xavier ended was actually a bounty that he took on. The bartender comments if he wonders the bounties that Xavier takes on, if he has a grudge against them, because Xavier never accepts the reward. The bartender hands Xavier a dark envelope, and that's when we walk into the nest, and we're both mutually shocked to see each other. Xavier rushes to us and says, "Come on, follow me," and he pulls us out of the nest. Once we get to a park a safe distance away, Xavier admits that he asked us to follow him without really thinking, and it was kind of just a rush judgment. There seems to be a mutual understanding between us finally to not ask questions about what each other's doing. He makes a note, like, "I don't want to ask you what you're doing in there. I know you're not going to ask me." And we just kind of move on from what the hell we were both doing. Xavier lets us know that there's a protocore auction in the N109 zone that may be including the ether core as well. He says Anakinus is holding it to deal with their partners after what happened with Lumiere stealing a ton of protocores. Nearby bots start to kind of zoom in on us, and we're getting a little bit surrounded by these bots, and realize that We're being watched. Xavier, like, what is going on? There always seems to be a threat when I'm around you. Xavier formulates a plan to take out all these bots that are closing in on us. And he asks to borrow it, meaning our evil, which I definitely think is something I also really overlooked. The fact that he has said sorry the first time he resonated with us, and this time he's asking to borrow it. It's very fascinating how he treats the use of our evil. After he asks to borrow it and we resonate with him, he uses all of that extra power to take out all of the bots that are closing in on us so we can't be followed anymore. Xavier takes us to a flower shop called Philo where we meet Jeremiah. Jeremiah completely freezes up at the sight of us and he's completely bewildered. We take note of his very odd reaction, and this is where Jeremiah greets us and he says, "Long time no," and then cuts himself off and he's like, "Hi," and gives us a very normal greeting. Xavier interjects and asks Jeremiah if there are any unused identities left in the vault so we can get into the N109 zone. Jeremiah helps us pick out an identity that ends up being an heiress to a crime syndicate, and he makes it convincing enough to the point where no one could ever be able to tell the difference from fact and fiction. While we wait on Jeremiah to finish up with any papers and any identity information, Xavier starts to coach us on how to kind of play this part in the N109 zone that we need to play to be safe. Things get a little heated and personal. Jeremiah walks in to find us in very close proximity to each other, and he immediately does a 180 and says, "Whoops, wrong room." And this is where we and Xavier are both like, "Wait, no, come back if you're done." He noticed Jeremiah is very sincere in his words with us. He's so happy and pleased to be helping us in any way, shape, or form. This makes Xavier kind of step in between us. Before we go, Xavier kind of implants us with a secret transmitter and says that even if there's no signal in the N109 zone, that they'll be able to track our every move. He then gives us an inhibitor to take that works against 98% of neurotoxins. Lastly, as a worst case self-defense move, he gives us a needle filled with liquid and says, "It is strong enough to take down an elephant. Don't be afraid to use it." Just as we're about to leave, he sends us off with one last gift, and it's a bouquet of flowers. And he just says, "Please accept them." And with that, we head out from the flower shop. Once we leave, it cuts to just Xavier and Jeremiah is in complete and utter disbelief that Xavier is just letting us go into the N109 zone. Xavier makes a comment that the N109 zone is going to be safer than Lincoln in a few days, and that we're better off in the N109 zone than here. Jeremiah agrees and says in that time we can take care of the stuff lurking in the shadows then. And then he asks Xavier, "Do you not care about our non-intervention plan anymore?" All Xavier replies is, "Some have already stopped." Xavier's inner thoughts continue his sentence that he does not say out loud, saying otherwise the explosion at her home wouldn't have happened, and the truth that has been hidden for so many years would not have started to emerge. Jeremiah snaps Xavier out of his thoughts, asking, "Do you know how long we've been here?" He says he can't remember people's faces anymore, and he worries that people's memories of them are also becoming fuzzy. He also states that their presence here on this planet is a mistake, and maybe that they're being erased every moment. Xavier then asks how Traceback 2 is, and Jeremiah says it can send out small signals, and he asks if someone on the other end really can receive the signal that it can give off. From all of that juicy information, we cut back to us and we call Raphael. We ask him to back us up at the nest and help us be the bait to trap Anakinus. We go to the nest, and when Raphael shows up, we can tell that he is a very frequent flyer of this place. He quickly mentions that he's been there before and he's looked for poisonous sap, but he says that his secrets aren't worth the trouble right now and that we're the star. The bartender hands us a small piece of paper and a quill, and Raphael tells us to write down our bargaining chip, what we're looking for. The bartender takes it and brings us back a black shot glass filled with the liquid. Raphael says if we drink it, a black shot glass means you're paying a very, very high price. Against his very strong warnings, we end up taking the drink. Raphael leaves us and we're wandering around the nest. We notice a bounty poster with Lumiere on it with a very high price. The lights cut out and a mechanical red floaty eye orb appears and looks very panicked. It's looking around the crowd and it sees us and it kind of just keeps flying back and forth and looking at us. And this is where a spotlight comes in on us and the crowd realizes we're the prey on Hunter's Night and that everyone starts going after us. A man in all black comes by us and injects us with some neurotoxins and tells us, if you're smart, don't move. We end up passing out, obviously. We cut to Raphael in a room above the club, talking to an unknown man with an ever brooch on his jacket. The man's face is half covered in the dark, and he wears a ring with a small green gem embedded in it. Raphael says it's not time to celebrate, and the big fish that they want hasn't fallen for it. He then asks if the man has brought the stuff that he requested. Something to note is that Raphael is also holding a black shot glass during this interaction with the mysterious liquid in it as well, meaning he's paying a high price for whatever he is being given. The man proceeds to slide something across the table to Raphael and asks him if he's really okay with handing over a fresh catch like that. And all Raphael asks in return is, do you really think they can handle the prey that I caught? We then cut to a screen showing space, with the program talking to us, saying that Traceback 2 will reach the edge of the deep space tunnel, and that it was rerouting. The galaxy in question on screen is in the shape of an eye, something very interesting to note of. We are then shown Zane freezing a wall with the same symbols that you see on the ground of protofields. And then you also see a Xavier at a Flux Nexus podium near a spaceship. And that is the end of chapter 8, and I will see you next time in the N109 zone.